Now, this is the last video that we're going to cover when it comes to the reparations hearing that happened on Juneteenth. Now, the second video, I didn't even want to talk about this until this one because it deserved its own video. So you have three individuals that were invited by the Republicans to come up there and be the people that would use white supremacist talking points against black people with reparations. But I want to go ahead and let you hear these three individuals in their entirety, and let's really talk about it.
Thank you, Chairman Cohen, Ranking Member Johnson, and members of the committee. It's an honor to testify on a topic as important as this one. Nothing I'm about to say is meant to minimize the horror and brutality of slavery and Jim Crow. Racism is a bloody stain on this country's history, and I consider our failure to pay reparations directly to freed slaves after the Civil War to be one of the greatest injustices ever perpetrated by the U.S. government. But I worry that our desire to fix the past compromises our ability to fix the present. Think about what we're doing today. We're spending our time debating a bill that mentions slavery 25 times, but incarceration only once, in an era with no black slaves, but nearly 1 million black prisoners. A bill that doesn't mention homicide once, at a time when the Center for Disease Control reports homicide as the #1 cause of death for young black men. I'm not saying that acknowledging history doesn't matter. It does. I'm saying there's a difference between acknowledging history and allowing history to distract us from the problems we face today. In 2008, the House of Representatives formally apologized for slavery and Jim Crow. In 2009, the Senate did the same. Black people don't need another apology. We need safer neighborhoods and better schools. We need a less punitive criminal justice system. We need affordable health care. And none of these things can be achieved through reparations for slavery. Nearly everyone close to me told me not to testify today. They told me that even though I've only ever voted for Democrats, I'd be perceived as a Republican and therefore hated by half the country. Others told me that by distancing myself from Republicans, I would end up angering the other half of the country. And the sad truth is that they were both right. That's how suspicious we've become of one another. That's how divided we are as a nation. If we were to pay reparations today, we would only divide the country further, making it harder to build the political coalitions required to solve the problems facing black people today. We would insult many black Americans by putting a price on the suffering of their ancestors. And we would turn the relationship between black Americans and white Americans from a coalition into a transaction, from a union between citizens into a lawsuit between plaintiffs and defendants. What we should do is pay reparations to black Americans who actually grew up under Jim Crow and were directly harmed by second-class citizenship, people like my grandparents. But paying reparations to all descendants of slaves is a mistake. Take me, for example. I was born 3 decades after the end of Jim Crow into a privileged household in the suburbs. I attend an Ivy League school. Yet I'm also descended from slaves who worked on Thomas Jefferson's Monticello plantation. So reparations for slavery would allocate federal resources to me, but not to an American with the wrong ancestry, even if that person is living paycheck to paycheck and working multiple jobs to support a family. You might call that justice. I call it justice for the dead at the price of justice for the living. I understand that reparations are about what people are owed, regardless of how well they're doing. I understand that. But the people who are owed for slavery are no longer here, and we're not entitled to collect on their debts. Reparations, by definition, are only given to victims. So the moment you give me reparations, you've made me into a victim without my consent. Not just that, you've made 1/3 of black Americans who poll against reparations into victims without their consent. And black Americans have fought too long for the right to define themselves, to be spoken for in such a condescending manner. The question is not what America owes me by virtue of my ancestry. The question is what all Americans owe each other by virtue of being citizens of the same nation. And the obligation of citizenship is not transactional. It's not contingent on ancestry. It never expires, and it can't be paid off. For all these reasons, Bill H.R. 40 is a moral and political mistake. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Chill. He was presumptive, but he still has a right to speak. Mr. Burgess Owens is recognized. Mr. Owens. Yeah. Every witness and everybody here should be treated with respect, and please do so. Mr. Burgess Owens is an author and a retired professional football player for the New York Giants and the Oakland Raiders. He's the author of a number of books, including the 2016 book Liberalism, or How to Turn Good Men into Whiners, Weenies, and Wimps, which offers a history and analysis of the black experience in the United States. He attended the University of Miami, home of the Ibis, blow hurricane blow. Mr. Owens, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm going to take a different tack from the beginning. We are at this point, this is not about black and white, rich and poor, blue collar, white collar. We're fighting for the heart and soul of our nation. We have a very, very special country that started with the Judeo-Christian values that allowed every single generation to become better than the last. And that has not ended, that has not stopped until now. We're telling our kids a little bit something different, that they don't have the opportunities that we had. I'm going to talk about some ideologies. And when I talk about them, I'm not talking about people. People change. I used to be a Democrat until I did my history and found out the misery that party brought to my race. So when I talk about these ideologies don't change, people do. We are fighting for the heart and soul of our nation against socialism, Marxism, and the evil that it has brought to us in the stealing of our history. Karl Marx said it best, the father of socialism, an atheist, anti-Semite, and a blatant racist. Yet we teach his philosophy in our school systems today. He said it, the first battleground is rewriting of our history. You steal our history, you steal our pride in our past, our appreciation for our present, and our vision for our future. And every single urban city in our country is now experiencing that loss. Real quick history, because these are things that we're not taught. I'm blessed to be the great-great-grandfather of Silas Burgess. Came here in the belly of a slave ship, sold in Charleston, South Carolina with his mother to the Burgess plantation. An evil, evil man that drove my great-great-great-grandmother either to leaving her family, her kids, or committing suicide. I don't know, she disappeared. But Silas at age of 8, was blessed to be surrounded by men who believed in freedom. Even though they were shackled, they escaped. They went the southern route of the Underground Railroad, facilitated by white and Mexican Americans. And he's made his way out south to Texas. He ended up being a successful entrepreneur, owning 102 acres of land, paid off in 2 years. Started the first black church, the first black elementary school. Pillar of his community, 18 kids, Christian, Republican. His first son was Alpha Omega. Proud American, an example of what happens when any race, any culture is given hope, opportunity, and freedom. It didn't end there, by the way. The history of our black country, of our black Americans, has been stolen from us for decades, almost over a century. Booker T. Washington, 1882, began Tuskegee University. By 1905, it was producing more self-made black millionaires than Harvard, Yale, and Princeton combined. The 40s, 50s, and 60s, it was a black community that led our country in the growth of the middle class, led our country in terms of men committed to marriage, over 70%, now it's 30%. Led our country in terms of the committed to business ownership, 40%, now it's 3.8%. Men matriculated from college. We now have a higher percentage of men incarcerated in college. It is, by the way, my degree was biology, and that I learned a long time ago that slavery is not a gene in the DNA helix. It's our actions, it's our attitude, it's our belief. I do not believe in reparation, because what reparation does, it points to a certain race, a certain color, and it points them as evil, and points the other race, my race, as one that is not only becomes racist, but also beggars. I do believe in restitution. Let's point to the party that was part of slavery, KKK, Jim Crow, that has killed over 40% of our black babies, 20 million of them. State of California, 75% of our black boys cannot pass standard reading and writing tests, a democratic state. So yes, let's pay restoration. Let's pay restitution. How about a Democratic Party pay for all the misery brought to my race? And those, after we learn our history, decide to stay there, they should pay also, they're complicit. And every white American, Republican or Democrat, that feels guilty because of your white skin, you should need to pony up also. That way we can get past this reparation and recognize that this country has given us greatness. Look at this panel. It doesn't matter how we think. The fact is, well, it doesn't matter our color. We have become successful in this country like no other because of this great opportunity to live the American dream. Let's not steal that from our kids by telling them they can't do it. Thank you.
Our next witness will be the Right Reverend Eugene Taylor Sutton. He's Bishop of the Episcopal Diocese of Maryland, a position held since 2008. Previously served as canon pastor of the Washington National Cathedral and director of the Cathedral Center for Prayer and Pilgrimage. Bishop Sutton has been a leader of retreats and conferences on nonviolence, reconciliation, and the environment, and has taught at New Brunswick Theological Seminary and Vanderbilt University Divinity School. He is a graduate of Hope College, earned his Master of Divinity degree at Western Theological Seminary, completed his Anglican studies at the University of the South School of Theology. Reverend Sutton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am here today as a bishop of the Episcopal Church, representing for many a perspective of the faith community in favor of the proposed legislation on reparations. I might say right at the outset, the debate we are having here this morning and the witness of my colleagues here points to the need to establish a commission. This debate needs to happen, and we need to entertain proposals for how we redress the evils of our past. If we don't address those problems in an open and fair way, then we are continuing to be lost as a nation. By the way, in terms of politics, some of my friends are for Democrats, and some of my friends are for Republicans. And as a religious leader, I am for my friends. I want to say that last month, the Episcopal Diocese of Maryland that I lead, 110 congregations across most of the state of Maryland, voted unanimously for the affirmation of reparations of our diocese, knowing that so many of the resources of our diocese was gained from uncompensated labor of enslaved persons. 100%, not a single negative vote from a diocese that is over 90% white, encompassing people from Western Maryland who have their own history of injustices, coal miners and others, Southern Maryland, suburbs, and city people. How and why did that happen? If it could happen in that diocese, I'm convinced it can happen in America. It happened because when the issue of reparations are fairly and fully explained, Americans want to do the right thing. That issue of reparations is mired in emotion. It's often mischaracterized and certainly largely misunderstood. It wells up an emotional response in people to the word, but when you break it down on what it's actually to do, we find that many of those emotions dissipate. Why is there the need for it? Let me tell you the story of a friend of mine. She and her husband, she was a pastor of a congregation. And a long time ago, she told this story of when their child was young. There was a young girl, a young teenager in the congregation who knew they had a need for babysitting, and she said, "I'll sit for your son tonight." And then she volunteered again. And then my friend and her husband started calling on her more and more. "Would you do this? Would you do this?" Never was the issue of money brought up. They knew she volunteered at first, but she, the teenager, wanted to do this for that more powerful person in that church. That went on for years. After a while, my friend and her husband thought, this was unfair. This actually was an injustice toward her. They wrote her a letter, now in college, and they said, "We believe, we have come to know that this was an injustice. We are sorry. We want to make amends." The young woman wrote back, "Thank you." And then they worked out a way that she could be compensated for her years of work. Their relationship was reconciled. They could look each other in the eye in a way that they could not before, because that wall of injustice of that past got in the way of their current relationship. That's what reparations is. And that's what our nation has failed to do for the last 120 years. Reparations, quite simply, means to repair that which has been broken. It is not just about monetary compensation. An act of reparation is an attempt to make whole again, to restore, to offer atonement, to make amends, to reconcile for a wrong or an injury. It is not the transfer of money from white people to black people. It is what this generation, our generation, will do to repair the broken pieces of the racial mess that we have all inherited. As an African American who is a descendant of slaves who were never compensated, I can honestly say to all white people, we've forgiven you. We forgave this country a long time ago, and we continue to forgive every day, but we are not reconciled. To reconcile means to put back together again that which has been broken. After the hard-fought abolition of slavery, there was a fateful denial in our nation of reparations for freed African American people, even though in many instances, white plantation owners received reparations in the form of compensation for the losses they incurred from the Civil War and the end of slavery. This nation is not, we know about reparations, it's just that it's never been done for those who've deserved it the most. Finally, I'm a Christian. That means I hold to the Holy Scriptures of the Old and New Testaments as my guidepost and to the teachings of Jesus. The Bible mandates that leaders are to be held accountable for the fair and equal treatment of every inhabitant in the land. All of us have been taught to love everyone, regardless of their race and human condition. However, we must come to acknowledge that there can be no love without justice, and there can be no justice without some form of repairing an injustice. I hear from many of my white friends, white brothers and sisters, this question: what do black people want? Haven't we done enough? What do they want? I want to turn the question around. What do you want? What kind of America do you want to live in? If you are happy with the state of race relations now, don't do anything on this issue. But if you want a reconciled nation, let's get this commission and let's entertain those proposals.
Now, that first individual, that Coleman Cruz Hughes, now, why is it that he was even up there? Now, I want to play a quick video of him and what he stated real quick about identity. Let's really roll that clip.
I think over time I started calling myself black rather than half Puerto Rican, half black. Not consciously or intentionally, but it just happened. And I think in retrospect, the reason I started doing that seems to me to be because there's much more to be gained in terms of social capital by calling yourself black. you're allowed to, how do I put it? You don't see as much Hispanic identity politics. There's less to be gained from emphasizing the half Puerto Rican side of one.
So you heard what he stated. Now, he definitely does not represent anyone who has a Puerto Rican parent or a black parent. He don't. He represents himself. I understand that. But as you heard him stating that he feels that he has to say he's black because it's basically his only benefits to being black. But if he says he's Hispanic, then there's no benefits to that. Now, there's a lot of people who have a Puerto Rican, Mexican, etc. parent and a black parent and love being black all the way through, just as much as they love the other side as well. Okay, but this guy is disingenuous based on that video. He don't care nothing about reparations, and that proves as such. So when he goes up there to Congress and saying the things that he's saying, trust me, the white supremacists already vetted him. They knew exactly who he was. That's why the Republicans put him up there to speak. And this guy is a straight clown. He's a clown all the way around. I had a brother who was asking a question the other day, and this is something that I have to really touch home on. He was asking, well, you know, about this particular guy. Well, what Pan-Africanists think about this guy? Because, you know, he was making these comments and also the video that came out. And I told the one brother, say, don't put that on Pan-Africanists. They ain't got nothing to do with that guy. He doesn't represent Pan-Africanism. I know the guy said he don't represent y'all, but the fact is we need to stop doing that crap. We have to stay on code. Pan-Africanists, they believe the United States is part of the African diaspora. Now, if y'all have that mindset that y'all just want to focus your attention just on the United States of America and relegate yourself just to the shores of America and just deal with American white supremacy, do that. But don't be trying to start that division between brothers and sisters who all believe in a global black family versus those who trying to reject that. Like I said, I think it's silly because white supremacy don't reject the globe. White supremacy is in every single country. And I showed you how they get in the previous video by giving their money to all these countries in the millions and sometimes billions of dollars. So we got to step it up on our global game when it comes to us and our community. Now, this particular guy here, he has some very suspect videos out there. And I'm like, he just, like I said, the Republicans, y'all don't realize how much they disrespect black people by putting those three clowns up there. They know good and well they knew nothing about the topic of reparations. They were no experts. None of them were, not at all. But only thing they was brought there to do was to use white supremacist talking points against black people and use a black face. For us, we have to understand that that is an extreme mental illness, because what other group of people would think that, wait a minute, this is a hearing to something that could possibly benefit me. Why do you don't want something to benefit you? That's insane. It's insane because they don't have the proper mentality, and also they're ill. They're just extremely ill. We got to start calling these bootlicks mentally ill and label them in the black community as the mentally ill ones. We have to outcast them like that, because what they do is they use the word black to try to get in our spaces, but then they are the ones that's being used by white supremacy to destroy. And like Candace Owens, every time she talk about, I'm black. Oh, you don't like me because I'm black? Oh, because I'm black. Like, no, you're only black for convenience, and you're only black to infiltrate. You're not a black person at all, what we define as a black person. You are a white supremacist in blackface. That's what she is, and the rest of them that you saw up there in this particular video. Now, we can't focus on them too much, brothers and sisters. I know a lot of you are upset with them, and rightfully so. But this is the thing. We know who they're working for. We got it. The moment they open their mouth, we must keep the pressure on with reparations. What we have to be, black people, is aggressive debt collectors, okay? We have to be an aggressive debt collector. You know how debt collectors, if you ever owe them some money, and the ones that are really aggressive, they calling you every other hour, they emailing you, they sending you letters, they text messages. I mean, to the point they harassing you in the middle of the night, some of them could. You understand? We have to be an aggressive debt collector because the U.S. government owes reparations. Don't be engaging these individual racists, that's going to tell you they don't owe anything, they're not going to pay anything. Unless you just want to have fun with them and troll them, then you can do that. And then a lot of times the best way to troll them is just troll them with gifts. Like send them gifts back in response. Don't even type a response. Don't even try to talk to them like logically or have a discussion, because they're not there to have a discussion with you. They're just there to agitate. They're there to be racist. That's what they do. They have an obsession with black people. And understand that what's owed is from the U.S. government is not them individually. Because the U.S. government sanctioned slavery. They sanctioned convict leasing. They sanctioned the black codes. They sanctioned Jim Crow. They sanctioned the current mass incarceration. They sanctioned the crack epidemic. Yes, so they put all that mess in the black community. Black people didn't have no boats to put that mess in the community. You already know who got exposed putting that in the black community. Come on. That was used to destroy black folks. Black folks redlined. Black folks couldn't get FHA loans at one point in time, which created the white middle class. Black folks who were in the military couldn't benefit from the GI Bill. Black folks are still being discriminated against in housing. Black folks still being discriminated against in the area with interest rates. Even with the same credit of a white person, they're still giving you a higher interest rate. So we have a right to talk about reparations. It's not just slavery, it's all of it. All of that needs to be prepared. All of it needs to be repaired. Not just a situation with slavery. See, these people got a one-track mind. They talking about act like it was just slavery, and after that, everything was great for black folks in this country. When they know good and well that's a lie. All these police killings that we seeing. The police is just an entity that come from slavery. The slave patrol. So what are you talking about? The slave patrol badge looks the same as the sheriff's badge. Nothing has changed. We still dealing with slavery. So we must be an aggressive debt collector. Use your social media page to let them know constantly, the U.S. government, you owe this. Let all those politicians know that you're not getting my vote unless you're going to talk about doing something about reparations. And the Democratic Party better take the heat more than anybody. Understand that. Because the Democratic Party has always received 80+% of the black vote. And they owe black people. If anybody owe it, they owe it. So be on those Democrats like white on rice. Be on them. Ask them what you going to do about reparations. No reparations, no vote. We here to collect the debt. Pay what you owe and keep letting them know you owe this. There's not no handout. There's not no free program. You owe this. This is a debt. A debt and a gift is two different things. Reparations is not a gift. It's paying what you owe. Be an aggressive debt collector, brothers and sisters. And trust me, the more and more you be an aggressive debt collector, they're going to lose their minds. Trust me, they're losing their minds now. Hearing you talking about reparations. They don't like that. Keep applying the pressure. Like Fannie Lou Hamer said, you don't want to help out black folk? Fine. Well, you're not going to have no peace either. If we can't have peace, you can't have it. So talk about those things like reparations constantly. Bring it up. Make them mad. Don't matter if they get mad and say they don't want to pay. We ain't asking you individual to pay. We talking about the government. They the one got to pay, not you. We have to keep pressing on, brothers and sisters, with this. Let the little mentally ill people, they're going to do what they do. It's sad. A lot of times I feel bad for them because I don't get mad as I used to with them, because I look at them as sad. I mean, it really, really looks bad, what they're doing, but I ain't got time to deal with that. Some of y'all can check them who got the energy. My thing is, let's be aggressive debt collector, brothers and sisters, with reparations. Don't let up. The march is on. Give me a comment anything about the situation with these guys here, but we're going to continue to have to deal with these kind of people. Unfortunately, we have too many cowards in the black community. It just call it what it is. But we're going to see it through, brothers and sisters. We're going to see it through. Keep pressing on with reparations.